Welcome back to another episode of Canadian Beef Podcast. We have a really, really special guest today, Lesley Timbol, who is a registered psychotherapist. She's also a mental game coach for athletes, and she's a competitive women's physique bodybuilder. So thank you so much, Lesley, for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Robin.
So,
thanks for coming on.
Yeah. So basically what we're going to talk about today with bodybuilding is bodybuilding encompasses both mental and physical components. So we tend to have a harder time with the mental component. Most competitors, athletes tend to kind of fail on the mental side. So we wanted to bring you on today, Lesley, and talk about some of the issues with mental health that bodybuilders and competitive athletes have or struggle with. So just starting things off, talking a little bit about body dysmorphia. Why do you think that so many bodybuilders and athletes have body dysmorphia, and where does that stem from?
Great question, Robin. So here's the thing. I want to define what it is first. So for people who aren't aware, so basically there's different names for it, whether it be muscle dysmorphia, body dysmorphia is this big umbrella term, and there's little offshoots. Muscle dysmorphia is one of them. It's also known as bigorexia or reverse anorexia, but it's a psychological disorder, and it's characterized by this obsessive preoccupation with muscularity and the perception of being inadequately muscular. So hence, bodybuilders tend to fall in this category. Now, this does not mean that all bodybuilders fit in this category. So I'm going to actually distinguish bodybuilders who do versus bodybuilders who don't. Because like anything, if you take a definition, if you have to kind of dig down into more of the details to find out what is actually pertinent. But as far as, why this happens is because bodybuilders are very, and this is part of their job. If you're going to compete, you want to add on lean muscle tissue. That's normal. But when it crosses to that unhealthy thought pattern, is that even when they look at themselves, they can never be satisfied. Mm-hmm. Now, there's different degrees of that, because you don't always want to be completely satisfied, because you want to keep pushing the envelope within certain health parameters. If you don't push yourself, you're not going to grow in many respects. I mean, physically, it's just one of them. But they can't even accept a compliment. And I'm not talking about a couple weeks, before their show, and how we say, like, a certain body part looks like shit, or, I'm not talking about that. The mindset of when you're in prep, that I'm taking that out of the equation, because that's a very kind of time limited thing. Most bodybuilders do not have that mindset 365 days of the year. Right. The ones that do, that's where they fit into this muscle dysmorphia, is because they can't separate the positives and the improvements. It's just, my body sucks, I'll never be good enough. And that's another piece. There's the perfectionistic, I have to do everything to a T. So even in their off season, what will happen is that, let's say there's a barbecue. It's summertime, there might be some barbecues. Let's assume that they're in their off season. They're still walking around with Tupperware, and that's okay, but they never go off the diet. Mm. You can be overly rigid, and if they're keeping up their cardio, like, I don't know, Robin, when you were prepping, did you have to do double cardio?
I didn't have to, but since you mentioned that, I feel like that's still something that I struggle with, because even if for example, I'm at the cottage last week and I'm barbecuing for the family, and I made like different types of meats and stuff, I'm still in the back of my head, in my subconscious, and even in my conscious mind, I'm worried about getting fat. I'm like, oh, if I eat a little bit of extra meat, I'm going to put on body fat, and I don't want to get fat. And this is even like something that I still struggle with now, like today, every day.
Do you think a lot of that is because, I mean, especially coming out of prep, right? Because yeah. I mean, as humans, we form habits, kind of quickly, and especially us as bodybuilders, we're kind of forced to form habits in order to be successful, right? So when we're in prep, I mean, I've been prep now for 6 months. Like, I'm obsessed with having low body fat, and it's a crazy trip, even what I'm experiencing now, like rebounding out of one show going into another.
Yeah.
Because I'm bigger now. My body fat hasn't changed, or it's become lower, but because my weight's up a little bit higher, I'm walking around fuller. Like I have mornings I get up and I'm like, man, I feel fat today.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Because going into my first show, it was all about get as lean as we can, like fat is the enemy and all this stuff. So then, and I've obviously experienced this before coming out of a show, just like you said, Robin, like, you're 2 or 3 weeks after a show, and that's literally on your mind still. Like you should be able to just give yourself a break and eat a cheeseburger and not even think about it. But your brain is so programmed to be like, that's bad. Because it's not on your plan. You don't know how many calories are in that. And it's a calorie dense thing and it could potentially put fat on your body. And that's bad. Not actually, your brain is just locked in that mode. And it just takes a while to come out of it, right?
It does. Yeah.
And that goes to the perfectionistic piece. And this isn't just bodybuilders, Morgan. This is also like athletes. To be at the top level, you have to be strict, not just with your training, but with your eating. So we get caught in if I'm not following that plan, then I'm going to sabotage my goals. And that's the last thing you want to do. Now you're in prep, so that adds a different component. But it's kind of like we almost see like certain foods are the enemy. I'm putting that in air quotes. And it's because when I say the enemy, it could be, like you said, it could just be extra food that you're having. Like, even if it's chicken's not the enemy. But if we're supposed to have X number of grams per day or per meal, and we go above that, we're like, oh shoot, I just went off my diet, And then it plays a number of your mind, and it's learning how to talk back to your mind. It's almost like a little kid reassuring it, because this is our insecurities. Our insecurities are like a younger version of ourselves that are saying, nope, you're messing up. And it's like, no, this is okay. In fact, if I'm in my off season, and if I was close to, if I'm too close to competition weight, I'm not going to grow muscle.
Yeah.
And like, again, you're in prep, so it's a little bit different. But when you're in your off season, if you don't gain a little bit, now obviously there's extremes to this, but if we don't want to be, there's that lean bulking kind of idea where you're not putting on too much fat. And this is where it's also helpful to have a coach or some type of accountability to someone that you can trust, who knows what they're talking about, to kind of reassure your mind, is this okay?
Yeah,
So
that's just something. I mean, we talk about that all the time, like how having a coach in the off season is so important, especially for these like beginner guys coming up, for this exact reason, right? Because a lot of people, myself included, have been in off season phase. And again, a lot of times for us, we're competing and then going into an off season. So you're coming out of this contest prep setting, and as you start adding food and seeing the scale go up, you kind of start to like doubt yourself. Am I getting fat? Is this bad? Right. And then people hold themselves back because they won't eat how much they actually need to eat to grow the muscle. Right. So having that reassurance, like you said, of a good coach telling you, be like, no, this is what we want. It's okay. The scale's going up. We're gaining muscle. This is what it's for. Then I mean, I know for me, like, it's necessary. Like, otherwise I'm going to stay shredded all off season. Like, I need that. You know what I mean? So.
Well, I tell people, if you're the same weight, let's say whatever weight you were last year when you were competing, if you're the same weight this year, that could be a cause concern. Now, you could be a lot more shredded at that weight for sure. But a lot of times, if you're not gaining weight, you're also not gaining muscle. Now, this is assuming you're very conditioned, let's say last year, because obviously, as we all know, conditioning is really huge. So it's not, we get caught up in numbers.
Yeah.
Like, we count, let's see, how many sets, how many reps.
Even when we know better. When we know better, we still get caught up.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we'll tell our clients, like, listen, stop focusing on the scale. And then we're in the prep and we're just like obsessed with the scale. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's hilarious. So
the scale becomes our feedback. This is the thing. And sometimes it's our eyes, which it's not that we're blind, but we almost become blind in the respect of we can't see ourselves. I don't know if you guys have ever been in this experience. Let's say getting close to a show and you're looking at, like, I don't see any change. I don't see any change. Where are my lines? And it's like, and then other people are like, no, actually, I see you trimming down. Your face is getting thinner, and like, we don't see it.
Yeah, no, I know.
Delusional. Yeah.
So it becomes skewed, and it's a lot of times it's the messages we tell ourselves up here that can really affect our mood and sometimes our motivation levels.
And what makes other people able to have so much more balance, like in their off season and stuff, without feeling guilty, but still being successful, right? Because that's what we're obviously talking about here. It's like, we know we still need some level of strictness in the off season to, you know, especially to be at our level. Like the off season is just as serious as prep, but we do have those in between phases where we're kind of not doing either. And those are probably the best times for us to kind of enjoy ourselves a little bit. Like we call those health phases for us. But still, like, why can some people enjoy those and not feel guilty? And then why can some people not and feel this urgency to be on track all the time?
That's a great question, Morgan. There's a significant number of bodybuilders, and we're picking on bodybuilders because this can be any athlete, that put too much of their identity in what I call their win-loss record. So what I mean by that is, okay, so if you're doing well, and who doesn't want to win? Like, this is why we compete. We want to win.
Yeah.
So when we win, we feel good, which we should. But when we lose, sometimes, that can do a number on us too. And that has a ripple effect of what will happen as far as mentally, whether it be our eating, our ability, okay, maybe we won't be on social media because maybe we're ashamed of our pictures because we weren't looking our best, or our peak didn't go well, or whatever the reason might be. But as far as the bounce back, it's learning how to say some people are better at recovering than others. A lot of that has to do with childhood. Where we taught that it's okay to fail when you're younger. A lot of us aren't. Look at the school system. It's like, it's graded on, A's, B's, C's, and whatever. So kids who don't do well in school or even fail are considered dumb or stupid, and that's not the case. A lot of them are actually smarter than the straight A students, because
it's kind of funny that you say that too, just because like the era of bodybuilders that are coming up now through like us, we're probably like the last generation that had to experience that type of hardship in school, where like failing was failing, like you said, like you were dumb. Whereas now when kids fail, it's like they get a pat on the back anyway, like in most instances, not in all.
Yeah.
So
it's gone too much the other way, Morgan, where I feel that some strict discipline is necessary. We need to fail, not the participation trophies. It's one thing, like I like the fact that they have novice categories for people who are just trying it. Cool. But when it comes to competing, you have to know how to lose, and we're not taught.
No, it's so
We're
true.
not taught how to lose.
Something else I remember too back in those days was kids who were really smart and kids who were like that really excelled in sports were put on a big pedestal, even by teachers and coaches and stuff. And like, it was blatant, like, you know what I mean? Whereas I feel like there's probably more awareness about that nowadays. But like you said, like it's kind of gone the other way too much now, where we're kind of just making weak-minded people because we're not teaching them, obviously the ideal situation is someone fails at something, and then you tell them how to get better from it. Like, this is how we improve from this. Like, it's okay to be disappointed, but this is how we move on and get better. You don't want someone to fail and call them a dumb idiot, but you don't want someone to fail and tell them that they did a great job either, because then a great job is a failure. Right. So
here's the thing, we're pretty self-critical, right? We're our own worst enemies. So a lot of things that we tell ourselves like are worse than, anyone else that might tell us. So but, it's learning how to kind of talk back. We're not taught how to talk back to ourselves. Like a lot of this negative messaging is from ourselves. It can be from other people, of course. And then social media, the role of social media is huge. So a lot of people are like, well, I need to get a lot of followers. I need to feel more popular. I need to put all this content, which is good. I'm not saying social media is bad, but sometimes people put too much of their identity in social media, meaning I need to have this. I need to have followers. I need to have this to feel like relevant, if you will, or popular, or gain followers. And that, again, that's great. But if that's the only source of your identity, that's an issue. Same like the win-loss record. If all you put your identity in, okay, I'm good if I win. Yeah. And I'm horrible, I'm a loser if I don't. Yeah. Again, I'm not saying you can't have pride in winning, But again, that can't be the only source of your identity. And people, to answer your question, your earlier question, Morgan, people who are able to separate their identity, saying one of the hats I wear is a bodybuilder. It's not the only hat. And learn how to do that. And for people who haven't done it, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you haven't been taught. So what you were saying earlier is about, you know, when you have a loss, see it as an opportunity for growth rather than, oh crap, I'm just horrible. I shouldn't be a bodybuilder. Why do I bother competing anyway? You know, and we've all gone through those dialogues, by the way. So that's normal, but it's learning how to bounce back from that.
Yeah. I like that idea of the self-talk, because it's true. It's we get automatically, we get a negative message that comes through, and we automatically just tend to believe that. So from your experience, what would your advice be for someone like me, someone like Morgan, listeners who we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be perfect, to win all the time, to be the biggest, to be the best. And we do sometimes put ourselves down if there's something that there's a flaw or we lose. And then we get that self message that might be negative. How do we overcome that, or what kind of strategies can we use to change that and move forward and improve?
First of all, I'd ask you, who's your GOAT? Who do you think is the greatest of all time in bodybuilding? What's your personal opinion?
Well, I would probably say Ben Pakulski, just because he embodied such a strong mental impact towards me personally and everybody else that he kind of worked with. Other than that, Jay Cutler.
Yep. Great choices. Morgan, do you have anyone in mind?
Well, I have a few, but I mean, I know how Robin answered this question, so I'll answer it from a physical standpoint and just say either Ronnie Coleman or Phil Heath, in my opinion.
And these are all GOATs. It's not a matter of what's right and what's wrong, but name me one of them that won every show. Name me one of them that hit their peak every single time.
There's none. So the point is they lost more than they won in the grand scheme of things, probably, right?
Like Phil Heath is close.
Well, yeah, Phil Heath is probably the closest. Yeah.
But again, it's how you recover, and it's do you give up? See, let's look at the term, you know, losing. We associate it to anything where we don't win. If we didn't get first place or overall, we lost. Even if you get second.
And even with Phil Heath, when he won, he got so much fucking criticism, like probably the most, because he would win and then all these keyboard warriors would just attack him, probably more than any other Mr. Olympia, because of the emergence of social media. So that's hard to deal with too. If you win a show, you know, we saw it with Ian Valliere.
That's what I was about to say. I was like, between Phil Heath and Ian Valliere, man, those guys can't catch a break.
Yeah, like that's probably just as hard, right? So yeah.
It's learning how to, you know, address that stuff. And to your point, these are keyboard warriors. You've probably noticed that whether, you know, watching their people who respond to them or in yourselves, we all have people who troll us. Yeah. And a lot of times they don't use their real names. And I don't know how many of them are actually bodybuilders. Right. You know, it's one thing to get a critique from a bodybuilder, but most bodybuilders, if they're going to give you a true critique, because we all know that we can make improvements in some respect, they're going to be constructive. Anything that's destructive, I tell people, remember, if nothing else, 3 words: consider the source. Meaning, is the source, first of all, can they be objective? If they're a troll, no, they're not being objective, and they're not even knowledgeable. So it's really putting into context. If you're going to put any attention and spend any time on investing any emotional energy in this kind of stuff, in this kind of negative feedback, put it in its place. These are people who probably, okay, they're trolls. Maybe they work out, but they'll never compete. These are not the type of people that compete. Go ahead.
I actually think that would probably be one of the hardest things to deal with, because I was just thinking as you were saying that, well, to me, it wouldn't matter what anybody said about me, because no one can be harder than me than I am on myself, right? But that's only when I lose and I come up short on like what I decided was going to make me happy, right? But I haven't been in a situation where I've decided what was going to make me happy, accomplished it, and then had a bunch of other people devalidate like or unvalue it. Like, you know what I mean? Like that would be actually very tough, I think, to deal with, especially you're talking thousands of people in the bodybuilding world, like at one time. Like, you know what I mean? Like I can only imagine how hard that would be to deal with. Hopefully I do get to deal with it one day.
And then if you need help with that, you just let me know, Morgan. But let's say for people like Ian's an amazing bodybuilder.
Yeah.
You know, he's got this huge, thick, dense muscle. I know people pick on him on his calves or what. I don't see anything wrong with his calves, but anyway. So, you know, it's like, you know, he interacts with his fans, which is great. But he, you know, sometimes he listens too much and he cares about the wrong people. It's trying to say, who am I going to listen to? If, you know, if Melissa gives him information or Chris or other people in his circle, that's different because they understand the industry and they care about him and they want him to be better and it's going to be constructive. So it's learning how to say, okay, if I'm going to read, so here's the thing. If you're going to go on social media, I would love to say stay away from social media, but I know that's not realistic. So I would say around a week before your show, peak week, don't go on social media. If you have to do social posts like for your sponsors, pre-record it, have it set up, or give it to a significant other or somebody, a friend, to post it on your behalf. Stay away from it. But you can't always stay away from social media. So before you go onto Instagram, Facebook, whatever social media medium you use, make a deal with yourself saying, I'm going to go with this with my proverbial popcorn. I'm going to enjoy the show because there's going to be a bunch of garbage on there.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
Look at it like a comic strip.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And especially because you're so vulnerable going into a competition at that point. And especially for us, because we're so hyper aware of our weaknesses and our flaws, we want to hide them. That's part of bodybuilding presentation. And when we pose, we're posing to hide our weaknesses. That's just the nature of bodybuilding posing. You're not going out there and showing off your weaknesses. You're hiding them. And sometimes it can get to us because if someone, even if they're nobody that we respect and they're a troll, if they point out, hey, there's your weakness, I can see it. We're like, oh, fuck, they can see it. We tried so hard to hide it and they can still see it. And that's what gets to us sometimes, I think.
So, and that's a great point, Robin. What I would say to that is remember who's judging you.
Yeah, true.
Because even if the judges see it, you're not going to lose on one. Like, remember, they're looking at more than one pose. They're also looking at your transitions. Like, there's a lot that goes into marking. So, I mean, how many times have we seen on social media peak week? Everyone's looking great. They're looking massive, you know, and it's like, we all know a lot can happen between that and backstage.
Yep.
You know, so it doesn't matter what they, you know, that's why I also tell people, be careful, because even backstage, you don't know how nervous they are. Are they going to be sweating and dripping out their tan, which is going to make them look, even if they have a great physique, that's going to actually hinder a little bit their placing because of they're not going to be able to see maybe certain striations because of the tan is all over the place.
It all adds
you
up.
know, you don't know how they're going to be posing. So I tell people, focus on you. Blur everybody out.
Yeah.
You know, like, have you ever been, do you remember being in school? I used to do this. I shouldn't say if you guys know how to do this, but I would watch the teacher, the prof, and I could look right at them so they think I'm listening and I'm in la la land. Like I'm thinking about something else.
Probably 99% of the time.
Okay. So that's what you need to do. And it's like you blur everything out. It's like when you're training. I train, and yes, there's going to be people around me. They're blurs.
Yeah.
You know, so unless they have like a clown costume and they go in front of me, they don't break my concentration. I call it the zero dark bubble. So when I'm training, I face everything out. I don't hear anything. And I also have iPods. Like I listen to music, so that helps kind of block everything out. And I go into a zone. Same thing when you're competing. Same thing when you're on social media. You go in there with a certain mindset before you open up Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you're on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a skill. That's an important skill for us to learn, probably for anybody, because otherwise it's so easy to get sucked into the distraction.
It's all about self-awareness, right? And it's all about like you said, having the self-awareness to set your mind right before you get into any situation, whether it's social media or getting ready for a show or setting expectations. Like, I can say that's something I did for my last prep for Toronto. Like, I was basically like, if I'm not in the first call outs, I'm not going to be happy. And I didn't get in the first call outs. And for a short period of time, like I let it devastate me until I kind of got my head together and took it as a learning experience and was like, this is what we need to fix, da 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 da. Right. But and now I have a completely different mindset going into the next show because I've learned how destructive that one was. That type of mindset did nothing for me. Whereas now I'm just focused on bringing my best physique, going on stage, putting on a show for the judges and everyone who's there to watch, and then whatever happens after that. Like that's where my head is at, and it's making me more excited for the show and more of a positive mindset, right? But again, like I had to go through something bad, which I would classify as a failure, and learn from it to even get the self-awareness to now have this mindset. Right.
Yeah.
So
and it's not to say it's bad to feel bad after if you don't get in the first call out. Again, I don't know a single bodybuilder that wouldn't be affected by that. It's not to say you should be a robot and you should not be affected by this at all.
Yeah.
It's about, can you bounce back and how fast can you bounce back? So it's that, that's what we want. Can you bounce back faster? So use that, like you said, as information. How can I bring the package better next time? We can defeat ourselves.
Yeah.
No matter what the judges say, we can actually defeat ourselves. So when you go into a show, and this is for like basically on any bodybuilder, focus on you in that moment. The moment you start thinking about the future or a different show or anything else, focus on you. Then if you're in that zone, and this is like a muscle, you have to practice this. Don't wait till show day to practice this. Just like you're posing, I would hope that you're not starting your posing practice the day before the show. Same thing with these mental strategies. They need to be implemented. And the more you practice it, the stronger the connection will be, the stronger your bounce back will be. So it's not to say you can never have a weaker mindset. Again, it's when you catch yourself, just like if you're doing, you're doing your reps. Sometimes we use a little bit of momentum on those last few reps, because we're just trying to struggle through it. You want to try to, as much as you can, be controlled about it.
Yeah.
Again, when you lose your focus, grab it back.
Yeah, that's a good point. I always try to say, teach clients and stuff like that and remind myself, you don't present what you intend, you present what you practice. So if you don't practice focus, if you don't practice bouncing back, when the time comes to need that stuff, it's not going to happen. You're not going to be very good at it because these are all skills.
But these are not taught, right? Like when bodybuilders say, hey, I've done everything for this prep. I ate what I was supposed to eat. I followed what my coach said. I did my posing practice. I worked really hard. These are all great. But again, like you guys was saying right at the beginning, it's this mental component that can actually, so when people say, hey, you know what, I don't have the genetics, or maybe I have genetics in one area, but not in these other areas. Guess what? This is what you do have. Because that can be your calling card.
Do you think that type of mind control is somewhat genetic though? Like
it can be genetic, but you can also develop it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the thing.
You can have an advantage somewhere, and then you can just build on it too.
Yes.
Just like a body. Right.
I mean, for me, I think Phil Heath has really he did get derailed, as we all know, with that one guy, but generally speaking, he has a very strong, solid mindset. Not all of us do. But again, to your point, we can definitely develop it. So that's the nice thing. Genetics, we can't develop. I wish we could. We can't develop genetics. But we can be, so I tell people, I want you to be stubborn. Stubborn, not in the respect of, I'm not going to listen, I'm going to do it my way, but stubborn is nothing's going to keep me down. Mm-hmm. So it's having that resilience. It's trying to have that mindset of, redefining what losing means. Losing means you stop trying. Losing does not mean second place, although we have to rework that in our heads sometimes.
Yeah.
Because in our heads, our goal is win. That's it. Well, I mean, overall, it's kind of I want to get first place. I want overall. Yeah. And anything else, is it really shit? That's what we tell ourselves. We can catch ourselves, and we need to kind of say, no, wait a second. That gave me information. That gave me intel as far as what I need to do for the next show. Question is, are you going to use that intel, or is it going to be wasted? So I tell people that's the power of choice. You can learn from this.
That's the real challenge there, right? Because it's like you can do so much for a show, put everything into it, like, or what you think you're putting everything into, just because, like you said, you're doing what you're told and all this stuff, and then you come up short, and then it's like you don't get that validation that you were looking for. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're basically looking to be validated. You're looking for all your hard work to be validated. So then it's hard, because then it's like, okay, I did everything I thought I was doing right was not actually right, and I have to make adjustments. And then it's like that can be a lot for an athlete that's coming off a hard loss, to them, right?
And Morgan, you brought such a great idea, and it's going to transition me to the next piece, is that validation. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with wanting external validation. But if we are not able to provide what I call internal validation, in other words, giving ourselves some credit, because let's say you're competing, against, whether it be, let's say Samson, you might have you might bring your best package to date, but if you're standing beside Samson Dowda right now, you may not win. Right. That does not mean you didn't bring your best to stage. So it's about saying, okay, did I check all the boxes as much as I can? Did I bring the best possible thing I could? Can you manage your expectations? So here's the thing. You can want to win, but expecting to win can be the downfall, because that goes into the needing external validation. It's not that you didn't do a good job. It's that he's in a different place. He might have better genetics. It doesn't mean you're a bad athlete. Some people are going to be stronger than me.
There's always somebody stronger. There's always somebody bigger. There's always somebody leaner. There's always somebody smarter. And we didn't start this journey to be necessarily the biggest or the smartest or the strongest or any of that. I think we all just started because we wanted to get better, and we wanted to be better versions of ourselves. So I think that's a good point, because that internal validation comes from telling ourselves we improved ourselves. We became a better version. We did what we wanted to do. We did what we started. We did what we wanted to do when we started this, which was to become a better version of ourselves. But for some reason, sometimes that's not enough.
Yep.
But it's like, it should be enough, because that's what we wanted to do. And then if we get the first place, that's like the cherry on top, and that's just like even more fun. Yeah. But if we're so focused on that has to be the thing, we need the cherry, or else we don't have fun. It kind of defeats the purpose, because it's supposed to be fun. We should be having fun doing this. No matter what level you're at, whether you're a pro, whether it's your first show, whether you're just someone who wants to get in shape, it should be fun. Because if it's not fun, how are you going to continue to do that and sustain this? So the internal validation, I think, is such a good point. And again, that's a skill. I think that is a skill, because otherwise we tend to default to external validation. We look for others to tell us, are we making progress, or whatever the case may be. And then we need that feedback. But if we could tell ourselves, hey, listen, you're doing a good job. You've come a long way. Sometimes I'll tell myself, you know what, you've come a long way, and that feels good.
It's just tough when we're always like setting the bar higher and higher as athletes. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, like for me, it was like getting the pro card. It was like, man, if I get my pro card, I'm going to be happy. Like, I'll be happy for the rest of my life. And now it's like, if I'm not winning pro shows, like, I'm upset. like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's just great. And so a big fear I honestly have for myself that reflected on and thought about, because I just know the type of person I am. And as I continue to kind of be more successful, like I feel my fire to be successful burn even hotter. So something that concerns me is like, am I ever going to feel contentment? Like I'm honestly a little concerned, like, because I do want to get to a point in my life where I can just kind of settle down and be like, okay, I'm happy with what I have. I just want to enjoy the fruits of my labor. But it's so hard to imagine me like ever getting to that point, because I just have these like never ending expectations for myself. And then I always meet people who inspire me, who, become friends and peers and things like that. And I see how successful they are. And I'm like, well, I want to get on that level. Like, like, so it's like, I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, honestly, especially these days. Because again, like even going back to social media, right? Like that's like a big one, just always seeing people doing a little bit better than you. And you could be doing great, like, right? But you see someone doing a little bit better and you're just like, well, shit, man. Like, my truck doesn't have 37-inch tires. I only have 33-inch tires.
So
like,
true.
what the hell? Right.
You see, accepting our limitations is not something we want to do, especially because we want to get better. Because if we accepted our limitations, we're not going to be competing. Let's face it. We need some level of, I'm not happy with what I look like, to drive us to get better. Yes, it's nice to have inspiration and, motivation from seeing, whether it be social media, people in your gym that you look up to saying, hey, I want to get to that level. Okay, that's great. But at some point you have to do what I call the realistic talk. meaning, and this is hard. This sucks.
Sounds scary.
Is that we got a ceiling. We all have a ceiling, and it's going to be different depending on the person. And none of us like our ceilings, by the way. But it's learning how to accept the reality. So to me, it's redefining what losing is. Losing is never trying. If you tried and you didn't hit your ceiling, that's not because you didn't try. It's because you were unrealistic in your expectations of your ceiling, but you had to try it.
Yeah.
In fact, I tell people, try, see how high you can go. But if you don't get as high as you don't, as you're able to or want to, you might have to reset your expectations.
Okay, so how does a person like me that's like extremely driven and like literally like want to be like top 5 in the Olympia one day, like if I don't get there, or someone like me doesn't reach a goal like that, how do you work towards accepting that and just being like, okay, I'll never be top 5 in the world. I'm just going to be tier 2 bodybuilder, and that's as good as I'll ever be, even though every single day for the last 20 years I thought about being a top 5 guy. Like how does one deal with that, like without getting depressed?
Well, first of all, look at the language. Just the top, first of all, you're a pro.
Yeah.
Second, you're second tier. To me, that's not. I know. But see
300 pounds of muscle.
This is part of us downplaying our achievements. So again, that's where we're putting our identity. I'm not saying don't strive to be the top 5. Okay, but when you look at the top 5, or even the top 10 right now, because I don't know what's going to happen at the Olympia. I can't wait to see it though. But I'm not saying don't strive for that. But if you're not able to get that, it's do you have regrets then? Mm-hmm. If I said to you, I have a crystal ball, I don't, but let's say I have a crystal ball. And I said to you, Morgan, you're a great bodybuilder, but you'll never be top 5. How do you process that?
I'm done.
Are you though? Are you? Okay. No, and you might actually say that. Yeah. How long would it last?
Not long.
No, well, what got me there was when you said like would you have any regrets? It's like would you not want to do everything you did to get to this point? Like it's like no, of course. Like,
exactly. See, that's a good reminder.
I'll still take what I got.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's funny too, because we're in this era, we're in this age where it's like we're told by people that are into the manifestation type stuff that you can manifest anything, and all you have to do is believe, and you can just like a magnet bring everything. You can be a billionaire, you could be top fucking 0.1% in the world of anything. You can go to the moon, you can do anything you want. You just have to manifest it, you just have to work hard, all this kind of stuff. We're told this by a lot of people.
I know.
At the same time, we limit ourselves more than ever, I believe, because of the fact that we're willing to give up what we have and what we need for something that we don't have and we don't need, because we think that enough is not enough. And so it's crazy. So we're striving to do everything possible because, okay, we only have this amount of time to live, and we put this timeline on ourselves. Oh, we only have 10 years of bodybuilding, and then, you know, that's it. Then our body's going to shut down. So we have to achieve all this stuff in that time. But then we limit ourselves because we're like, oh man, like if I don't get that, I'm going to be unhappy. And then we're not happy in the moment because we're not enjoying what we have to begin with and what we've fucking already worked so hard for. So I think that's kind of it's crazy that we're in this time and that we do that to ourselves. But it's also incredible because it teaches us. It's a constant learning lesson for us.
Well, that's the real loss there, right? Is going through this whole journey and not enjoying it because you're just constantly disappointed in yourself. Like, and then you look, then there's going to be a time when we can't bodybuild and we're not competing, and we'll look back and be like, man, I wish I had more fun, like when I was doing that.
You know, and you'll hear a lot of the older guys talk about that too. You know, when they look back, they're like, I was so focused on the shows and winning, I wasn't even really enjoying myself. I was just going from show to show. I was almost like a robot. I was just automated. I did the same thing every single day, but I couldn't enjoy the process. And it's okay, is it really worth it then? If you can't enjoy, not to say the whole thing is enjoyable, because when you cut down on carbs, it's not exactly, well, for me, it's not enjoyable, but you know, there's parts that are not, but overall, remember what's your why? Yeah. Is your deep-seated why? I'm not talking about winning. I mean, obviously that goes without saying, but to me, that's more superficial. What got you into bodybuilding? What does it really give you, apart from a trophy or a medal or anything like that? And sometimes we have to remind ourselves, what is our why? Yes, we want to win, but that's a superficial level. What's the deeper why? And it might change as we go through shows, by the way, and as we get closer to I'm getting older, or my legs aren't responding, or whatever it might be. Or let's say you get injured. That can do a huge number on your brain too. There's also something called forced retirement. It's one thing to retire, which is hard enough in bodybuilding. But if you're forced to retire and you weren't ready, and you're like, you know, I still had 10 years left, but I had this huge injury. I tore my quad or whatever, and I can't, you know, whatever. It's not the same.
It's devastating. Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's devastating. It's about reinventing. Because here's the thing, we're okay, by nature, human beings are lazy. We don't want to do anything more than we have to. So to think about another option other than bodybuilding when you're a bodybuilder, no. I don't want to think about that.
I think it would be the hardest thing I think it's got to be one of the hardest things to reinvent yourself from being a bodybuilder, because it's not like other sports. Now, obviously the professional sports, if you're playing the NBA for 15 years, like it's a little different, but like when you're a bodybuilder, even like if you're trying to get your pro card for 10 years at the national level, like you do this 365 days a year, 24/7. So, you know, to take that competitive, because you can still bodybuild and eat the meals and train, but when you take that competitive aspect out of it, like of that, like what, like that really gives you a purpose of why you're eating this way every day and training, even if your show is a year or two away, that would be so tough for someone like us. Like, you know, like it would, to just not have that goal, to have to find something else that challenges you at the same level and gives you that type of gratification of getting through a prep and doing a bodybuilding show and you know, bringing your best package to the stage. Like it would be hard to find that level of gratification anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. It's not going to be the same, but you can find it. You know, that's why a lot of IFBB pros will become, I mean, you guys are, you know, whether they're current coaches or when they're going to be more fuller time coaches. But even, you know, we've seen other IFBB pros that have retired, and look where they are. They've reinvented themselves. You're right. It's not easy, and it forces you to think, and it may not even be in fitness. It could be something different, but it's learning how to pivot. And the thing is, like I said, we're lazy. It's kind of like we're used to a certain routine, a certain kind of goal, a certain kind of mindset, and to think very differently, it takes readjusting.
It takes time, right? Like
you got to reallocate your time. Like you got to really reallocate your time. Like, you know, that would be tough. Like meals are important as like other things now. Like,
right? Yeah.
You can't be successful in something else if you're worried about eating 6 times a day.
Well, look at Flex Lewis. He was so relieved, that he doesn't have to eat so much because he has digestion issues. He still trains at the gym. It's not the same as he did before, but he's bouncing a family, and he has his, not just the gym business. He's got some other businesses going on. He's got a successful podcast. I mean, like, there are things you can do. It takes time. What I do invite people is that when they do start to get inside their heads, start thinking about what you're going to do after bodybuilding, because it's good to lay out the groundwork for it rather than waiting to say, okay, I'm done. Let me see what else I can do now. Start some of the preliminary steps as far as researching what would I want to do after I finish bodybuilding. Start that process early.
Yeah, I mean, you should really be starting, like, if you only got like 3 or 4 years left, like, you should probably really be getting something going, like, you know what I mean? Like, I know that's something that, like, I jumped on super early, because I remember guys like Jay Cutler, like, talking about this, like, you do not want to be one of those guys that, you get injured or you start placing poorly and all your money's coming from sponsors, and then all of a sudden, you're only doing 1-year contracts, 2-year contracts, then they stop coming and you got nothing, right?
The momentum fades quick. Yeah, the sport it turns over so quickly, that, once you start losing that momentum, it's gone quick.
Well, Jose Raymond, we had him on the podcast, and, like, I'll talk about it because he talked about it openly on the podcast about how he, that's literally what happened. Like, his competing days were coming to an end. He wasn't placing that well. And then one day his sponsor that he was getting like a 6-figure contract from, I think, was just like, yeah, we're not paying you. And, Jose was just kind of living like off of that money. Right. And then, put him in a rough spot for a little bit. Now he's bounced back. But I mean, you can avoid being in that hard spot, because when you're a pro and you're competing, especially at that level, like top 2 in the world in the 212, like, you can monetize the hell out of that. Like, sure. You should have a successful YouTube channel already. You should already have an online coaching business set up. Like, why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? It's going to be pretty easy to get it going when you already have all these followers and fans and people that will support anything that you do. Right.
Especially nowadays you can make money off your couch money all day, versus like Jay Cutler was like that's why we consider him the GOAT, because he was doing that stuff, but he was like, he had to actually do stuff. Like, he had to go and make DVDs and actually physically mail them himself and like do this kind of stuff. Now we can just sit at home, drop ship stuff. We can just do stuff online. We don't even have to get off our couch to make money.
Yeah, I literally don't.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no.
I go to the gym. My activity today was my hour on the treadmill, me going to the gym, working out, and coming home, and then I sat down again.
Yeah, exactly. So true.
That's it. Yeah.
No, it's crazy. Yeah. I think I'm thinking of it like, now it's like as a pyramid, where you have like the lower level of pyramid. It's kind of like, you have your genetics, and you have your following the diet, and you have your training, and then it kind of builds up into like, okay, now you kind of have like your mindset stuff. You have the extra discipline, you work on your posing, the extra stuff, it'll take you from regional level to national level to pro. And then what's that the difference that takes you to the Olympia and then beyond? Like you're saying, now there's this peak. And then when you reach that peak, do you just fall off and then you're fucking stuck at the bottom again? You want to stay at the peak. How do you do that? You have to plan ahead, obviously. So that's a scary thought. Probably me and Morgan are like, fuck, we don't want to think about that. We don't want to think about what comes after bodybuilding. We want to stay in the moment and enjoy every moment. But we live in a dualistic fucking world. Like, we have to be in the moment, enjoy what we got, and enjoy the present, but we have to plan for the future, because we don't know what's going to happen. If we don't plan for the future, we're probably going to get caught in some kind of disaster, because things always happen. Like COVID, right? Good example.
Good thing we're smart. We're ahead of it.
That's it. Good thing we're talking to people like Lesley who are going to help us.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
100%.
And that's the other thing too that kind of ties into a next point is, like we were saying, with having a good coach, you need to have a solid team around you, because if you're just going through all this stuff in your mind, you're going to make yourself crazy and you're going to defeat yourself. Or if you're just listening to the fans, you're listening to the haters and the trolls, you need to have some people around you that's going to ground you. Maybe it's your wife and your coach, but you can't just put all of it on those two people. You need more than that. And sometimes, a lot of the times, your friends aren't the right people. They might not understand or be able to help you in the same way. So
yeah, you need to invest in people. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
exactly. It's a good
you got to
point.
find some way, like whether it's pay, I don't know, someone like Lesley, like to have a call once a week, or you could even like just have a good friend that you're like, hey man, like I'll take you out to coffee every week and we'll just sit down and, you know, talk things over. But yeah, you definitely need something.
Yeah. Energy exchange.
Yes. Yeah.
So how do you navigate for a bodybuilder, for a fitness athlete? How do you navigate finding the right people?
Well, apart from your inner circle, I would say go to the professionals. So someone like myself, I mean, what a lot of people like is because I compete, I understand that world.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm a registered psychotherapist and I'm a mental game coach for athletes. So I've got that kind of, 3-tier system. Now, it doesn't mean I'm the only one out there. There's other mental game coaches out there. But it's about addressing something very tailored to you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like when you have clients and they say, what's the best diet or the best exercise split? Well, depending on where you're at, you have to tailor it. It's not going to be a cookie cutter approach. Same with the thing with the mental game coaching. We're talking about some generalities, but there's some specific things so you can really fine tune when I work with somebody to work with their specific obstacles. And I say, okay, let's also look at not just your obstacles, let's also look at your strengths, because that's something we never want to think about. So if I said to you, what are 5 of your best strengths? You might struggle coming up with 5. But if I said, what are your 5 weaknesses? Oh, you could probably just rhyme them off really, really quickly.
Good point. Yeah. I don't think a
So
lot of us do that.
yeah, and it's learning how to, and again, it's not to say put ourselves on a pedestal saying we're perfect. No, but it's to celebrate the successes and categorize the losses. Like I said, a true failure, and this is what I really want people who are watching this to really try to sink in. Failure is not even showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, remember what Michael Jordan said, he lost 100% of the shots he never took.
Yeah.
So it's like you got to put yourself out there regardless of where you place, even if you place last, because what you're going to do is you're going to build from there. Now, it's harder, let's say, if you place, it's harder, when you become the fish, when you become the big fish, but it's a small pond, and then you go to the big, like the bigger ocean, and you're like the small little guppy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit of a mind thing, right?
Yeah.
And
transition.
And then let's say you're doing really well in the pro shows, but then all of a sudden you start going down, because I think if we go back to Ian, did he place 7th? I want to 2 years ago at the Olympia.
Yeah.
Yeah, he dropped back.
And then what did he place this past year?
I think he was 11th or 10th.
Yeah.
Right. Now, granted, remember, he wasn't mentally where he needed to be, and that probably impacted whether, I don't know all the details, but I know he was looking really good before. So something was messing up. So that's not typical for him. But let's say he presented really well and he still came in 11th. If we get caught up in the numbers, it's I slid down because I was 7th 2 years ago, and last year I was 11th. If he was in better condition and still placed 11th, look at your competition.
Mm-hmm.
It's like people who go to the smaller or less competitive shows, they might get 1st or 2nd. Cool. You go to New York Pro or one of the other bigger shows, obviously the Olympia, you may not place that high, but you're not supposed to. Yeah. So it's getting caught up in do you want to place 1st in a smaller show, or would you rather do 10th at the Olympia?
So a lot of times you basically you just need to be able to kind of take a step back, going into these competitions and stuff, and just be like, what's realistic here? Because it's you could of course I want to get first call at every show, but if I'm at a super competitive show with veteran pros, you know what I mean? It's going to be way harder for me to get that. So it's good to just kind of at least take that into consideration going into it and set it up as a possibility in your mind. So you're not just absolutely devastated when that happens, right?
And that's managing the expectations. You can strive to win, you can compete to win, you go there to win, but you don't expect to win. I know it's a bit of a shift.
Yeah.
Now, let's say you go in there and you see these people. Let's say you're competing against Ian, and you're like, oh crap, I'm not going to be. It's like, and it's not that you look bad. It's just that Ian has, he might be bigger, as far as structure, his V taper, more musculature. He's always super conditioned. Go in there instead of getting caught up in I'm competing against this top Olympian. Is I want to see how much I can make him sweat.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because you just don't know. You never know. It's very hard for any athlete to be at the top consistently. Are there some out there? Yes, there are. But everyone knows what it's like to lose.
Well, especially in this sport, man. And that's why it's like no show is the same, because again, like you said, we have different people doing different shows all the time. So it's like, yeah, like just because you get second in one show doesn't mean seventh place in the next show is bad. Like, because it could be a completely different lineup. And in bodybuilding, I mean, again, like this happened to me at Toronto, like your look can change in a couple of hours. Like you can be on, ready to go kill it, bring your best package ever. And then you use the bathroom a few times and don't drink enough water and your look's totally different. And,
yes,
and then you drop back a few placings because of that. And people will look at your physique, like everyone that looks at the pictures after the show and stuff, and be like, oh, this guy's soft. He wasn't in shape. Not knowing 3 hours before you were hard as nails, you just kind of like went a little bit flat. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, that can happen in bodybuilding. It's just one of those sports that it's like so volatile in that way for each person.
So volatile.
And guys will tell you this all the time. Like the best bodybuilders ever, some of the best guys in the world will say that there was only a couple shows that they were ever actually 100% at, or they felt they were 100% actually peaked. Like every other show was like, this happened or this went wrong, and they just got it together to get on stage. Like there's a story comes with every show, right?
And this is what I believe, is that a lot of the times the story ties into something that's physical and almost out of your control. But a lot of the times I do believe it comes down to the thoughts, and then the thoughts become the reality. It's like, even like, again, to bring up Ian, you mentioned Ian, but he's not the only one that this has happened to, but
you
have a few things that you're maybe unsure about, because it happened to me in New York. There's a few things that you're unsure about. And yes, that ties into physical, because it might be a pose that you try to change last minute, or it might be a meal that you try to carve up a little bit more, a little bit less, or a little bit more water, a little bit less. And those are things, but that sets off your mind because you're unsure. And then the uncertainty creates this kind of downward effect throughout your body, and you feel it, because as soon as you're unsure about how the body is going to look, or you're like, I hope this fills me out the right way, or I hope I'm dry enough, or I hope I'm lean enough, or I hope. Now it's like you just spent all of this time preparing yourself. You should be prepared, and your mindset should be 100% on. But maybe that's why it's almost, how is it possible to be always 100% on? You have to practice that, but sometimes your mind can slip, and when your mind slips, the physique slips a little bit too. And there's such a, like you said, it's so volatile. There's this tiny little margin of error. A little bit, 1% here, 1% there, and you slip placings.
And that's assuming the show's running on time. I'm sure we've all been to shows where there's been
a million and one
delays.
variables. Yeah, there's a million variables. Yeah.
This is what,
and that can be a factor, because then we have doubts. Oh crap, I ate too early, and we don't go on. Like, let's say you were doing your carb up, and then they tell you, oh no, you won't be on for 2 hours, and you just carb, and it's like, fuck, it's like.
That's such a good point though, man, about that unsureness. Like I can relate to that so much coming out of Toronto, like literally. And as soon as you said that, like I didn't even think of that, but as soon as you said that, I was like, man, like that is exactly what it is. It's like once you get that one thought in your head of like, oh, maybe this is not right now, or or maybe I should have ate more, maybe I should have drank less. Then it's like, then you just have anxiety. Yeah. You're going to be thinking about that until you get on stage. You're going to carry that on stage with you. It's going to affect your posing. It's going to affect your confidence. But if you can just block all that shit out and be like, I've done everything I can do to get to this point. I feel good. I'm going to go on stage and do my thing. This is the package we're bringing. I feel like that would just make such a difference in the presentation, right?
I think you have to. I think you just have to be proud of what you're bringing, man, no matter what. Even if you make mistakes, you're going to make mistakes. No, nobody's perfect. You're going to make mistakes along the way. But if you make one mistake or two mistakes, or even 3 mistakes, does that mean that your whole prep is ruined and you're going to lose your confidence? you have to go in there feeling good about what you're bringing to the stage. If you don't feel good about what you're bringing to the stage, well, the judges aren't going to feel good about what you're bringing to the stage. Yeah. So, because they feel it. It's an energy thing, right? They can see it. The audience can see it. If the audience can see it and people in the back can see it, the judges can definitely fucking see it. They can feel it.
Yeah,
and logically that makes so much sense.
Yeah, well, we've all watched shows where you can see the person who's on stage who's not confident, and then you can see the person who is confident, and they're just like radiating.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
makes all.
But one way of helping people do that, because easier said than done, right?
Yeah. Let's hear it. Give us the tips.
Yeah.
So visualization is great. So when you're having doubts, so it's not just, it would be lovely to say, don't have doubts. So what I tell people is when you have doubts, because again, I like, don't be on social media. Okay, when you're on social media, let's be realistic. As far as what do you do to visualize? Okay, when you start getting in your head, oh crap, maybe I should start carving up, or maybe I shouldn't have carved up. Should I walk around? Should I put my feet up? It's like, take a breath. And now I want you to imagine what you're going to look like on stage. I want you to rehearse and go through your poses. Go through your poses. If you have a routine, distract yourself with the logistics of what you're going to put up there. Visualize it. If you have space, if you have a little bit of energy, start going through the motions, because you're going to get yourself tighter by doing your mandatories as well. But visualize success, because the more you occupy your mind with healthier thoughts, the more the doubts will go down, because you're not even thinking. You can't doubt if you're thinking more positively, if you're keeping your mind occupied. It's like a little kid. They go on this wayward little path, and it's like, no, come back. But you have to give the kid something to do. So what you're doing is you're giving your brain something to do by visualizing what you're going to do, and visualize your success, rather than building up this, and I call it going down the rabbit hole of all this negative stuff, what ifs. So it's kind of like, instead of saying don't what if, I'll say, okay, if you're going to what if the negatives, I want you to what if the positives too. Balance it out. If you're going to overanalyze, because sometimes we get in our heads too much, I say do it properly. Look at the negatives. Okay, but then look at the positives. What if you actually do well and you didn't sleep and you carved up too much and all this other stuff? What if? Have you ever thought about that? You got to balance your thoughts out.
Yeah, because that was my next question, is like, what is your advice? Like, say if it is like a day before the show or day of a show, and like your mind you feel your mind start to slip, and like you feel that anxiety start creeping in, like what would you say to like an athlete if you were coaching them?
If you are most people, not everybody, most people are visual learners. So I'll say, okay, get out a piece of paper or get out your computer, and I want you to write down, what did you do to prepare for this show? Make a checklist. How many of those boxes can you check off? Is there anything that you didn't do? And let's say you thought of something, or you say, I cheated on my diet once, or I was allowed to cheat meal and I went a little too crazy. Okay, put that down. Are you saying that one thing, or let's say two things, is going to make that end result, going to sabotage the end result? I'm telling you, it's not. It's not. Now, if you believe it's going to, then it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you're going to actually believe something, you're going to think, how about you believe that despite not being perfect, because believe it or not, even your goats have not been perfect, they can make it work, because you are so strong in these other areas. Again, your strengths are stronger than the times that you fell down. That will get you to that point.
So just like think about how hard you trained, or like how hard you went on cardio. Be like, yeah, like that definitely made up for that extra French fry I had.
What I mean? Just nerves will burn up the fries. Okay.
Yeah, literally. It's not too seriously, I'm asking that for myself, like, to be honest, like, because I think it's good. The more mental tools I can have, or things to rely on, because that's, we developed these habits, like we said, over the years. Like we learn how to kind of cope with different things and how to get ourselves through hard mental things. We have to as bodybuilders, because we spend half our life suffering. But yeah, like it's good to just have those things in your arsenal to be like, okay, this is happening. I gotta write my checklist right now. Like, what did I do to get ready for the show? Right. And then that right there, it's like, if I know now, if I like have that, write out that checklist, I'm automatically going to feel better, because that checklist is supposed to make me feel better. So
assuming you did your job, like, I mean, if someone sat and ate McDonald's, that's a little different, but that's not you. But as long as you've done your due diligence, remember, you did your work. Were you perfect? No. But here's the thing. You don't have to be perfect. And this is where perfectionism comes in. It's well, if I didn't do everything perfectly, see, here's the thing. We have these two sets of rules. If we didn't do everything perfectly and we won, phew, we got lucky. You know? So we don't even attribute to it. No, we friggin' worked hard. Not to say, you can't have a little luck, because it could be a little bit lucky that Samson Dowda didn't compete against you, as an example, And I like Samson. I'm not, when I say his name, I mean it very respectfully, because I like him. Guy. Yeah. But I'm just saying, managing our expectations to saying, celebrate what you've done, what you've put the work in, and you go in there to show people your work. Mm-hmm. So it's like for an interview, a lot of people are nervous when they go in an interview because the interviewers are judging them, like the judges, right? No, you're interviewing them. Let me show you why I deserve to be here, judges.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, this is some good stuff.
Yeah, man. It really is. It's like you guys are here to judge me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the show. Like, I'm the boss.
Exactly.
I'm the boss here.
Forget the Toronto show. This is the Morgan show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, welcome to my
you guys are,
sit back, have your popcorn, enjoy this.
That's it. That's what I'm bringing to Vancouver.
I remember hearing actually, my girl showed me this wellness competitor, and she made a story about how when she gets on stage, her mindset is, you're fucking welcome, because it's like, I made your job easy. I did everything to make your job easy, so you're motherfucking welcome.
Wow, I like that a lot.
Good shit. Yeah, I got tingles right now.
That's heat. That's heat.
Yeah, exactly. Jeez. Well, fucking. I think we should end it there, because that is so much valuable information. I'm absolutely loving that. And Lesley, thank you so much for sharing all your experience and your knowledge. I think this is probably one of the best episodes we've ever done, both for me and Morgan, I'm sure, but also for our listeners, because we get a lot of feedback saying they like the mindset stuff. And this is it's all mind-blowing stuff, but it's also very actionable. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and if the people who watch this, if they have further questions, certainly, we can do another episode. I'm happy to address them too.
Yeah, and definitely, Lesley, I'm going to put all of your contact information below. So if anybody wants to get a hold of you and work with you one-on-one, that would be something they can definitely look into. Big Mo, you want to say anything before we sign off?
No, just thanks a lot. That was, perfect timing for me, I think, to hear some of the things you had to say. So I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. And thanks both of you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No, it's our pleasure, Lesley. Thank you so much. All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.